So hi, Suzanne, and welcome to Sage Advice, Superhumans, and Storytelling. We are collecting diverse expert narratives for seniors in high school from people who have been there and done that. We want you to share your narrative and give them experience that you've learned along the way. So let's go ahead and start with a little bit of background for how you and I met, and then I'll have you tell me a little bit about yourself. So do you remember how you and I met?
I do. We met because of the Student Leader Fellowship Program at NMU. I can't tell you when, but it was probably almost 10 years ago.
So I wrote down 2010 with a question mark because I couldn't remember if it was 2010 or not, but it had to be very close to then.
That's my guess. It has, yeah, because Henrik was just a baby, I think.
He was. And I would say that our relationship definitely just kind of blossomed from that program, but it's turned into a friendship. I would consider you a mentor still, but definitely an adventure buddy and running partner.
Definitely. Yeah, it's funny because I participated in that program for many years. And while I made connections with other students and I've kept in contact with other students, I can honestly say that none of them have gone quite like ours, where they turned into a true in-person, one-on-one, long-standing friendship.
Yeah, and it's spanned several states. I mean, we've kept in contact in 3 or 4 states since we met and then moved back to the Marquette area. Can you just start by telling me a little bit about yourself? So where are you coming to us from right now? Where are you from originally?
So I'm in Marquette. Because of COVID, I'm actually in my 12-year-old daughter's bedroom because it's the only place where I can get some quiet right now. But I originally grew up in Cairo, which is a small community down in Lower Michigan, a small school, small town, a lot of poverty. I then went to the University of Michigan for my undergraduate and graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in History. And I went from there to the Juris Doctorate program at Wayne State University, graduated with that degree, took the bar exam, and then took a job in Marquette. Actually, before I knew my bar results, I took the job. I found out my bar results about a week after I moved to Marquette. And that was in 1997. I have been working at the same firm in Marquette since October of 1997.
Congratulations. Wow.
It's been a long time, yeah.
Well, yeah, especially when you consider a lot of researchers say that most people will change their career between 3 and 5 times in their lifetime. So being able to put in that many years in one place doesn't happen very often anymore.
Yeah, and not only have I not changed my career, but I haven't even changed my employer, so it's a bit unusual, no doubt.
So what made you want to stay in Marquette once you landed here? Aside from getting a job, why did you decide to stay here?
So when I first moved here, my goal was to work for the firm for a couple of years, get some experience, and then go back to Lower Michigan where all of my friends and family were. I didn't have any real ties here. I didn't know anyone. It was a job. I mean, it was just, I needed a job. It was a good way to get experience. But probably within the first year or so, I realized that Marquette and the outdoor lifestyle and the opportunities for things outside of work really were where my passions were, and that I probably wouldn't get that anywhere else in Michigan. And it just didn't make sense to leave.
I would agree. I would say, I mean, that's definitely part of how we've bonded, is spending a ton of hours on trail outside, enjoying the beauty that is Marquette.
Getting lost on the trails, yes.
Yep. Although you having your watch that keeps us on a path is really nice, which, mine doesn't do that. I think of you often when I'm on the trail, literally trailblazing, and I'm going, oh man, it would be really nice if I had that little beep, beep, beep. You're more than 50 meters off your trail.
Yeah. Yeah, that's real awesome, except when there is no trail within 50 meters, so you end up bushwhacking anyways.
Exactly. In your career, so this is kind of a 2-prong. Let's go with successes first. What are some of the successes you've experienced within your career?
So, I've thought about this a little bit, and this is sort of a difficult thing to measure. I mean, from the outward standards, I would say that my successes, the obvious successes, are that I have been a practicing attorney for 23 years with the same firm. I was the first female partner the firm ever had, and I'm the first female to end up with my name in the firm name ever in the history of the firm. So, I mean, those are big deals. I mean, really, that the firm's been around. We merged at one point, and when you look at both firms, we've been around 100 years. And for those two things to be true is a huge deal. Those are a little harder for me to look at and say, like, woohoo, even though they're a big deal, because those don't feel like the personal gains. Those sort of feel like the trailblazing gains for all the people that come behind me, not the, oh, I won this case in the Court of Appeals, or I got this for my client. And those individual sort of successes and victories feel bigger to me, even though those are the kinds of things that no one ever knows about because they're confidential and I can't share them, you know? So it's kind of a loaded question because of that.
So before I ask you about your failures outside of work, because I don't think any human is just comprised of what they do for a living, what are some of your lifetime successes? Other things about your life that you enjoy that you would consider a success?
So I would probably say one of my biggest successes outside of the profession, well, I guess a couple. I mean, one, I would say my marriage, my home life, which is more important to me, quite frankly, than my profession. You know, my husband, we've been married for almost 15 years. We've been together almost 20. And that is one of my biggest sources of joy, no doubt. My kids, that, you know, I feel a little bit, what do I want to say? I feel a little bit biased in saying this, but I think they're pretty darn good kids.
I think you have,
you know, and they don't,
awesome kids.
And it feels weird to say it, but they don't get there by themselves. And I think that we've worked really hard to make them who they are. I've also sort of view one of my successes as being able to be persistent and not give up on things that are hard, things that maybe don't always go well the first time, to be able to do things like run marathons, run half marathons, complete a half Ironman, complete a 50K. Those are things that, you know, I'm never going to win those things. Doesn't really matter, I guess. But at the same time, to know that I can put in the work to get to the finish line of those things is a big deal for me.
Heck yeah. I would agree. You do have awesome children. And because I've shared so many miles with you, I would say definitely those are successes. And admittedly, I wouldn't have run marathons and probably an ultra had it not been for the one that you coaxed me into in 2013 or 2014.
Yeah, you wanted to run the half, and I talked you out of it. I remember that.
And it was a lottery, and you were like, you know, pretty sure you're not going to get in because it's a lottery, and I think they've given all the spots away. And the more I thought about it, I was like, shoot, she's right.
I have, okay, so I'm going to call you one of my successes because I directly tell people, like, oh yeah, she wins all these races and everything else, but it's because I got her hooked on marathons.
It's very true. And you made it really easy because you were like, I've already got the hotel room booked. You don't have to worry about it. You're only an hour and a half from the start. So yeah. And then
you need to show up prepared and have money for food, and that's it.
And that's it. I don't remember it. You know, I don't know if it goes like downhill from there or uphill from there. That
yeah.
Start my marathon career for sure. Yeah, you could count that as a success for sure.
I'm calling that my success. Good work, Mandy.
Okay, the adverse of that question then is like some failures or some pitfalls. So we can look at failures as a form of success, especially if they teach us something. So we can look at this question that way too. But what are some failures or pitfalls that you've experienced throughout your lifetime?
You know, and that's hard because there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of failures. There's a lot of things not going right. College, I wouldn't call it a failure. I graduated, but college was sort of a series of failures for me in getting from the small town, small school to very large university, very competitive. Most of the people that I went to college with didn't have to work full-time, almost full-time jobs while they were students. And, the academics came hard to me for a long time until I found the right classes. So I thought, well, I need to take math and I need to take science and I need to take these things that I am familiar with because I took them in high school. And I failed in a lot of those things. And I wouldn't say failed. I mean, I got credit for them, but there were a lot of barely credit-worthy grades that frankly were failures. That, I worked really hard and I studied a lot and I still couldn't get even a C or a C plus in those classes. And that was really difficult to keep going and to just push forward and say, okay, I just haven't figured it out yet. I haven't figured out how to pass chemistry, or I haven't figured out how to pass calculus or economics or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of failure before I figured out, like, well, as it turns out, I'm good at history and I'm good at communications and I'm good at, these other sort of classes that are much more subjective and much less sort of math science based. Uh-huh. And that's really when I realized, okay, maybe I need to be thinking about a different career. And I hadn't really decided on what I wanted to do, but, what would fit with what I seem to be good at, because I'm really not good at these other things, despite thinking that I was. And so that was hard. And then going on to law school, again, working almost full time, because I put myself through college, I put myself through law school. Neither of my parents didn't make any money. They made just enough that I wasn't eligible for grants, but not enough that they could actually help me in any way. So trying to navigate that and get into law school and struggle against all these kids who had it so easy, and to, not do as well as I wanted to do, that was a real struggle. And it taught me how to figure out what I was good at and how to use my strengths. And it kind of taught me maybe what I didn't want to be doing. And it taught me, that I was tough and that I could suck it up and I could make it happen even when things weren't easy. And that was a big deal for me. I mean, I had always had to fight for my grades, even in high school, but to have it come that much harder once I got to that higher level was even more difficult. And even really throughout my career, there's lots of failures. I mean, there's the big cases that you really truly believe you should win and you don't. And that's painful. Your clients are counting on you, they're relying on you, and you don't know why you didn't win because it just doesn't even make any sense, but it is what it is. You're stuck with it. And now what do you do? How do you make it work? And really trying to figure out a new way of problem solving to get around that.
And so during these failures, what's something that's helped you maintain your resilience? So one of the things you just touched on was this ability to bounce back. You encounter failure and sometimes you don't know why and you don't have answers, but you keep moving. So what keeps you moving, or what do you tell yourself? What's that pep talk? Because I think that's a universal lesson that applies to seniors, especially as they enter whatever life is going to look like for them when they graduate.
For me, a huge part of it was watching my parents financially struggle. They both had not great jobs. I mean, they were okay jobs, but not great. But they struggled financially, and I came from a small town that was dying, and I knew that my only chance was to get out. My only chance to actually not live the life that they were living and their neighbors were living was to get out. And the only way to get out was to get an education. Mm-hmm. And so when I was struggling with the education, I just had to keep reminding myself that the goal was to not live like they were living. And if I quit, that was going to be my life. And I didn't want that for a life.
Wow. And so you'd also described being in college and seeing people who had it, and we can say subjectively, easier than you did because they didn't have to work a full-time job and pay their way through school. That's pretty common as well, to see those two different paths. And so what advice would you give someone who's going to pursue an education after high school and they have to pay for it and they likely will have to work their way through it? Those are going to be very difficult 4, 5, maybe 6 years. what's some advice we can give them to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and to remember that we all have a little bit different journey, because it can be frustrating to watch other people have something that's much easier than what you're going through.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember having a friend, and she was a dear friend. I love her dearly to this day. We stay in touch. But I remember she got a job in the cafeteria, and she quit on the third day because she couldn't handle 6 hours a week of work. And I was working a 20-hour a week student work study job, but that wasn't enough. So I picked up a second job at the bookstore, working another 15 hours a week. And I'm like, are you kidding me? But beyond that, I think at the time it was incredibly difficult. It was very hard. And I didn't get as much sleep as I should have. And I didn't go do some of the things my friends were able to do, go out to dinner all the time or whatever it was that some of them were able to do. But I just kept reminding myself that this was the only way I had. It was the only option I had. And in hindsight, when I look back on it and I look at what some of them have done with their lives, I realized that hard work, that work ethic that I had has really served me well, because I've learned how to dig in and work hard when I need to. I've learned how to fight it out when the going's tough. And some of those people have had several career changes, and they've had to start over, and they've struggled financially, and they've struggled with life. And I'm not going to say my life has been super easy, but it has definitely taught me, that hard work pays off. And sometimes, frankly, it sucks, but in the end, you get out of it what you put into it.
And so with your career, what would you say, and this is kind of a loaded question now that I look at it, I kind of think it's loaded. What's challenging about your career? And then we'll talk about what's rewarding with your career. I know.
Okay.
Only because I've run with you so much and I've heard about some of the challenges, do I know that this question has an answer that's this big?
It does, yeah. And I'll try to, not make it this big, but I think there's a lot of challenges in any career. And in my career, I think the biggest challenge is really, there's all kinds of ways that people can practice law. And so those challenges are different for different people. But for me in particular, I'm a small business owner. So I have the challenges of the partners that I work with and all of us trying to run a business together. I have the challenges of worrying about finances to make sure that we can get paid and our employees can get paid and the bills can get paid. I have challenges of worrying about whether clients are paying for the work that we're doing for them.
Mm-hmm.
I have challenges about, worrying and dealing with whether or not we're doing enough work to keep the business afloat, but whether we're doing the work properly so that we're not committing malpractice and we're putting out a good work product and keeping clients happy. And I think with most jobs, people tend to complain when they're unhappy, and they tend to forget to say thank you when they're happy. And so I can go a year without a thanks from a client. They pay their bill. I assume that means they're happy, but it might be a couple months, it might be a year or two before someone says, wow, thank you so much, you really helped. And to keep going every day when you doubt yourself, whether you're doing a good enough job and whether you're making the right decisions and whether you've missed something, because there's so many laws and so many things out there that you might not be giving them the best advice, even though you think you are. Mm-hmm. And to do that really without feeling like you're getting much appreciation is difficult. It's a very difficult thing.
Absolutely. And so I know that you and I spoke, we were both taking the same Yale course. I don't know if you've made it to week 2 yet, but I
haven't yet.
Okay. So they start to talk about savoring and gratitude and what researchers found when we experience gratitude. So the simple act of sitting, taking 5 minutes, thinking about the things for which we're lucky, or saying, thank you, I appreciate you. That multiplies gratitude for the person saying it and the person receiving it, not for days or weeks or months, but it can be years after the event. And so it can have a substantial effect, in your case, on someone's ability to continue to move forward and do their job because they know and they've heard from their clients that what they do is meaningful or life-changing.
And I will say that the clients who have gone out of their way to thank me, or to tell me they're pleased with what I've done, or frankly, if they refer work to me, I assume that means they're happy. I take that as a compliment.
Yeah.
But I remember those people. I can't tell you their names because of confidentiality, but I could probably tell you most of their names right now, even though it's spanned over 20 years, because there's not a lot of them, but also because it's really stuck with me. And I had a client many years ago, and honestly, I thought I did a good job for him, but I was just doing my job. Like, I didn't think I did anything extraordinary. And he was so pleased that he wrote me a letter. And at the time, he copied the firm of the president, basically telling me how thrilled he was with what a great job I did for him, and how pleased he was with the work, and how thankful he was that and how lucky they were to have me as an employee. And I was an owner, but he didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was 15 years ago. I still have that letter. Like, you keep those things, because those things, that's the joy. That's that's the good part of the work.
Yeah. And I call that a smile file. I have letters from students and I put them, it's a manila folder. I wrote smile file on the outside of it, but you pull them out on the days where you question, why am I doing what I'm doing? Is
Mm-hmm.
what I'm doing making me happy?
Does it matter to anybody? Does it
help anybody?
Yeah, exactly. Do they even care?
So, okay, this is a great segue then. So then what are some rewarding aspects of the career that you chose and have had for 23 years?
Really, the rewarding aspects are definitely the clients. They're difficult clients. They are not rewarding, but there are clients who are very thankful. There are clients who are just a joy to work with. Really, the best part of my job is dealing with the people and being able to make a difference in their life, being able to help them solve their problems, being able to make their lives better, take some of the worry away, depending on what it is. That hands down is the best part of what I do. So
you just described a lot of, I would say, service-oriented people who like service, and I'll put education in that. We like serving others and making life a little easier for them and helping them. So how do you balance that care for others and care for yourself? So what are some things you do to maintain your own homeostasis, take care of yourself?
So, that's hard, because sometimes I have a client situation and it weighs on me. It keeps me up at night. Mm-hmm. I can't let it go when I go home. But certainly, and I've said this for 10 years or more, I would not be able to do what I do if I didn't run. I would have had to quit. I would not be able to do this. That is one of the big sanity points in my life, and keeping that stress down and helping me get past those things that just weigh me down and burden my brain, but spending time with my family. I know people in my profession who have their email on all the time. They give their clients their cell phone number and say, call me anytime. And I am not one of those people. These are the hours I work. When I'm not working, if it's not an emergency, I'm not on. My email's not on. I'm not taking your call. I don't give my cell number to very many of my clients. And when I do, it's because I trust them and they're only going to call me on that number in an emergency. Mm-hmm. And, they do only call me in an emergency. But I have made very clear boundaries between work and home, because that's the only way you can ever get away from it without letting it just suck you in and being your whole life.
Do you think that that's a valuable skill to learn? So you make a really good point. I don't have my school email on my phone, but I do have an email on my phone. And I'm desperately hoping that while we were recording this, it's not going to chime because it's really loud. It's also synced with my computer. But do you think that work-life balance in this world where people have typically more than one social media platform, they have a work email, they might have a personal email, and being able to find appropriate times to push those things aside and stay centered on your own life and your family, do you think that's important? Do you think that that has any impact on the successes that you've had in your life, your successes as an individual, as a parent? I know that's kind of a loaded question, but.
I think it's critical. I mean, I have many partners who don't turn theirs off, and I get emails from them at 1 o'clock in the morning. I don't actually get the email because my email's turned off, but I can see that's when they sent it. They go on vacation and they're checking their emails, and I just, in fairness, these are typically people who either don't have children or the children are grown and gone. Okay. But it is clear to me that their entire life revolves around their career or their job. And I wonder sometimes if their entire self-esteem revolves around that as well. But I think it's critical. You have to get away. You have to set boundaries. Clients expect a lot as it is. They expect that you're on all the time. They expect they send you an email and 5 minutes later you're going to solve their problem and respond to them. The document they want drafted, you're going to suddenly have done, and it's going to, be sent to them. They expect that like immediate gratification. And when attorneys, really any career, but attorneys feed into that by being on all the time, they're basically telling the client, my time is not valuable to me. The only thing that's valuable to me is you. And I think that says a lot.
Yeah. So is this something you've had to learn? Would you say that there was a period in your life where you didn't have the boundaries that you do now, or has it always been pretty clear cut to you that you needed strong or firm work-life boundaries?
I have always set those boundaries. Yeah, I've never been one to say like I need to be on all the time, because I recognize that for anyone's sanity, you have to be able to walk away and do something else. I would say that the boundaries became a lot more clear and a lot stronger when I had kids, but certainly even before that, when I was at work, I worked. When I was not, I did not.
Good for you. I would definitely say that's something that I have learned from you, and not even that it's something we talk about all the time, but I do think you model it in your personal life. If I'm spending time with you and your family, I'm spending time with you and your family. You don't have your phone out, you're not texting, we're talking. Usually we're either running or having a meal together. But I think that's something that I've definitely had to learn because I am, a single with no kids. I have a furry 4-legged kid, but so it's easier for those lines to blur for me if I'm not adamant about, nope, this is me time, and push everything else away.
Well, in fairness, also remember that I started practicing before email was common. It existed. I used it in college. I used it in law school. But I probably spent the first 4 years or more of my career where clients, probably longer than that even, but where we did not use email for work. We had, and this is sort of embarrassing, we had 25 employees in the building, and we had one dial-up line that when we needed to do research, we strung the line from office to office, whoever happened to need it to get on the computer to do their legal research. Because we also use books, but really, I didn't have a cell phone when I started practicing. So there were no boundaries to set. I was either at the office or I wasn't. And when I wasn't, unless someone made the effort to call my home phone, there was nothing there. I mean, they couldn't call me unless they called me at home. They couldn't email me. Those things just didn't exist like they do now.
That's an excellent point that I hadn't considered. I'm going to combine my last two questions, and it's kind of a doozy. If you had advice that you would give to senior in high school you, and then a senior in high school now, what would those pieces of advice be?
So if I had advice to give to a senior in high school me, it probably would be to never give up. Just keep fighting. Don't let people tell you you're not good enough or you can't. Mm-hmm. And if they do, prove them wrong, which is frankly how I've lived a lot of my life. And just never give up. Just keep fighting. Just keep pushing forward. Just keep finding ways to make it work, make it better, and don't quit. I guess that'd probably be the same advice for me and high school seniors now. If you're passionate about something, if you feel strongly about something, if you've got a goal, you might not reach the goal the way you thought you would. It might not happen as easy. It might not be a direct path. But if you've got a goal and you want to accomplish it, the only thing standing in your way is you.
I really appreciate that. And that's very similar to the advice that I would give them as well. I appreciated your emphasis on resilience, that just keep going, keep getting after it. But from here on out, the narrative that they write is theirs. It's all them. All of them. Absolutely.
I mean, I've had so many people tell me I wasn't good enough. I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't smart enough. And, you know, so what?
Watch me.
So what? You know, I think of a particular employer when I was in college, for example, who told me I wasn't smart enough to graduate from law school. She didn't know I was wasting my money to go. And I remember thinking, like, you don't even have a college degree. Like, who are you to tell me what I can and can't do? Like, I'm about to graduate from the University of Michigan, lady. Like, for real, you know? And I remember, like, not for a second thinking she knew what she was talking about, but instead just thinking, like, who are you to think that you know whether I'm smart or not? You know nothing about me other than the work I do for you as your part-time work-study employee.
Mm-hmm.
Like, really, you know? But I remember also thinking that she was going to be the first person I sent an announcement to for my law school graduation. And I did. And she sent me a gift and she told me how wrong she was. She apologized for being wrong. I was like, wow, you know?
Wow.
And I didn't put it in her face. I just sent her the announcement and she sent me a nice card and said, boy, I had you pegged wrong. I'm so sorry. Congratulations. I'm so proud of you. And I was like, okay. So
you're a little teary-eyed. So as we wrap up, is there anything else that you would like to leave? Any other pieces of wisdom or advice for high school seniors who have had the end of their senior year cut a little short and they are emerging into a very turbulent adult world?
You know, the only thing that I would probably want to add, and I've shared this with my middle schooler on a little bit of a different level, is that it feels like high school is your whole life. It feels like your high school graduation is the most important thing you're ever going to do. But 10 years from now or 20 years from now, it's just one more thing you did. It's not the be all end all. And I get it. I would be super disappointed if I had to miss something. My 10-year-old was disappointed not to be able to go to state championships. I was disappointed not to be able to watch him go there, you know, and I totally get it. My kids were both supposed to go to Bay Cliff this year, and that was super disappointing. But in the scheme of your life, you're going to have so many more, much bigger moments, much more memorable moments, much more things that will have such an impact on where your life goes than whether or not you get to walk across the stage. That you got to remember, as hard as it is, that you got a lot going for you. You got a lot of life, and you're going to do great things. Mm-hmm. And
one of the
this is just one of them, you know.
And it can be really hard to remember that right now. I know.
Absolutely.
I've received emails from some of them listing some of the things I didn't think I would look forward to, but now that I don't get to participate in them, they seem like a much bigger deal. And so just reminding them that it doesn't feel small, and I don't want to minimize it, but it is just one of the many awesome narratives that you get to live and write and experience from here moving forward. But yes, you will forever be able to say, my senior year was COVID-19. Here are the things that it interrupted. So,
you know, and I don't mean to make light of it, because certainly you and I have not lived through something like this at a time like these students are. And I feel for them, because it's got to be hard. But if I had to list the top 10 most important days of my life, prom or high school graduation would not be on that list. It wouldn't. And those are big things. But once you get beyond high school and you start living a different life outside of the walls of that building, you realize it's a really big world, and there's some really awesome things that you can do. And as important as it is, there's lots of other important things out there.
All right, I think that is a great place to end. So I just wanted to thank you one more time for letting us pick your brains and be a part of this project, and know that you are reaching collectively about 500 or 600 kids.
Sweet. Glad to be able to help.